two traders. Same account size, same strategy on paper. One of them will be profitable in 5 years. The other will have quit, or worse, still be trading. Still losing, still convinced the next tweak will fix it. The difference between them has nothing to do with intelligence. Nothing to do with who reads more charts, who has a finance degree, who watches more market open live streams. The difference is one word most traders think they've already mastered and haven't: rules. Today, I'm going to show you why a documented, boring, mechanical rule almost always beats a gut feeling, even when the gut feeling is right. And I'm going to show you exactly where trusting your instincts quietly turns into the thing that empties your account. You already know how to work hard, you've read the books, you've watched the webinars, you've backtested things at midnight when you should have been asleep, and you still hesitate on entries, still exit early out of fear, still hold losers just a little longer because something in your gut said, wait. It's not effort, it's not intelligence, it's not lack of information. The real villain is that your gut is a survival tool built for a world with lions in the grass, not a tool built for reading a 5-minute candle chart. Your gut is excellent at keeping you alive. It is terrible at asymmetric risk-reward decisions made 40 times a day. Let me introduce you to two traders. Call them David and Maria. David is an engineer, sharp, methodical, exactly the kind of person you'd expect to succeed at something as analytical as trading. He builds a system with 14 indicators: RSI, MACD, 3 moving averages, Bollinger Bands, volume profile, a sentiment overlay he pulls from social media scraping, and a proprietary confidence score he built himself in a spreadsheet. On paper, it's a masterpiece. In practice, David never trades the same way twice. Here's what happens. The system gives a clean signal, then David glances at the news, then he checks the correlated pair, then he remembers the last time this setup failed, then he adjusts his stop just a bit because something feels off. He is not executing a system. He is having a committee meeting with himself, and the committee never agrees. Over 18 months, David blows through 3 accounts totaling $51,000, and every post-mortem review shows the same thing. The original signal was right. David's gut overruled it. There's a specific night that captures the whole problem. David's system flags a short entry on a currency pair at 2 a.m., exactly the kind of clean, boring setup his backtest is full of. He opens the platform, cursor hovering over the sell button, and then he pauses. He remembers a similar-looking chart from 3 weeks earlier that reversed hard right after entry. So he waits. He watches the candle close. He watches the next one form. By the time his gut finally gives him permission to enter, the setup has already moved 60% of the way to what would have been his original target. He takes the trade late, at a worse price, with a tighter margin for error, and when a normal pullback hits his moved-up stop, he's out at a loss on a trade that, taken exactly as designed, would have been one of his best of the month. He didn't lose because the strategy failed. He lost because he consulted a committee of one bad memory instead of the rule sitting right in front of him. Maria was a nurse for 11 years before she started trading. No finance background, no engineering brain, no interest in building the perfect indicator stack. She has 3 rules. She risks 1% per trade. She only trades a setup she can describe in 1 sentence. She takes the trade or she doesn't. No partial size based on how she's feeling. No skipping entries. Because yesterday was rough, when her rule triggers, she executes. When it doesn't, she closes the laptop. Ask Maria why she trades the way she does, and she'll tell you it's the same reason she followed medication protocols on the hospital floor instead of trusting her gut on dosages. A nurse doesn't decide in the moment that a patient seems like they can handle a slightly higher dose because the day feels different. The protocol exists precisely because human judgment is unreliable under pressure, fatigue, and emotion. And a trading account under stress is not meaningfully different from a hospital floor at 3 a.m. She didn't invent a new philosophy, she just imported the one skill her old career had already beaten into her. When the stakes are real, you follow the protocol, not the feeling. Maria's win rate is unremarkable. Her strategy is not exciting. Nobody would want to watch her trade. There's no drama in it. And that's exactly why. 4 years in, she's compounding steadily while David is on his fourth broker, still hunting for the missing indicator. Not because Maria is smarter, because she made trading stupidly simple and then she did the simple thing every single time. That contrast is the whole video. Everything else is just explaining why it works. Let's talk about what's actually happening in your brain when gut feel takes over, because this is where most trading education completely fails you. Nobody tells you the mechanism. They just tell you to trust the process, which is a slogan, not an explanation. Root cause number 1, the intelligence trap. Traders assume that because they're smart in other areas of life, that intelligence transfers to markets. It doesn't. PhDs blow accounts. Surgeons blow accounts. Software architects who ship flawless code blow accounts. Intelligence helps you build a complicated system. It does nothing to help you follow a simple one when your amygdala is screaming at you to do something else. The 95% believe their edge is how smart they are. The 5% understand their edge is how consistently they execute, regardless of how smart the moment feels. Root cause number 2. Complexity as comfort. Every time a trader adds another indicator, another news source, another confirmation signal, it feels like progress. It feels like diligence. It is neither. It's a nervous system trying to manufacture a sense of control in an environment that fundamentally doesn't offer certainty. Complexity is fear wearing a lab coat. The 95% keep adding filters until their strategy resembles a Christmas tree decorated by someone having a breakdown. The 5% strip filters away until almost nothing is left, because every filter you remove is one less place for your gut to sneak back in. Root cause number 3. The control illusion. You cannot control whether a trade wins. You cannot control the next candle, the next headline, the next algorithm dump that moves price 4% in a minute. The only thing you control is your process, position size, entry rule, and whether you followed them. The 95% spend their energy trying to predict outcomes. The 5% spend their energy protecting their process and let the outcomes take care of themselves over a large enough sample size. Root cause number 4. Recency bias disguised as intuition. Here's the trap nobody names directly. Your gut isn't randomly wrong. It's wrong in a very specific, very predictable direction. It overweights what just happened. 3 losing trades in a row, and suddenly your intuition tells you to skip the next signal, even though the next signal has nothing to do with the last 3. 3 winners in a row, and suddenly your intuition tells you to size up beyond your rule, right before the mean reverts. What feels like wisdom is often just your nervous system doing pattern matching on a sample size of 3. The 95% call this a hunch. The 5% call it what it is, noise, and ignore it. Root cause number 5. The sunk cost spiral. A losing trade held past its stop doesn't feel like a rule violation in the moment. It feels like hope. It feels like giving the trade room to work. This is your gut protecting your ego, not your account. Because admitting the trade is wrong right now feels worse than the abstract risk of losing more money later. The 95% negotiate with their stop loss. The 5% treat the stop loss as a contract they signed with themselves before emotion showed up. Non-negotiable, no exceptions. No, just this once. Root cause number 6. Variable execution. This is David's core problem, and it's the quietest killer in trading. It's not that his system is bad. Backtested, his original 14 indicator system actually has a positive edge. The problem is he never trades it the same way twice, which means the backtest and the live results are 2 completely different strategies wearing the same name. If your execution changes trade to trade based on how you feel, you don't have a system. You have a suggestion you sometimes follow. The 95% believe they're trading a strategy. The 5% know that a strategy you don't follow consistently isn't a strategy. It's a hobby with extra steps. Root cause number 7. Outcome bias masquerading as feedback. This one is subtle, and it's the reason so many traders can journal diligently for years and still never improve. A trade goes against the rule. an early entry, a moved stop, an oversized position, and it happens to win. The brain records that win as proof the deviation was smart. Nobody sits down after a lucky break and says, I got away with something. They say, I read that one well. One lucky deviation gets filed away as evidence, and evidence accumulates into a belief. And that belief is what eventually convinces a disciplined trader that their gut has gotten good. It hasn't. It just hasn't been punished yet. The 95% let outcomes teach them what to believe about their own judgment. The 5% understand that a single win or loss is statistically meaningless, and they refuse to let it rewrite the rule. Now, here's the part where I show you what to actually do about each one. Because naming the problem without giving you the shift is just entertainment, not education. Shift 1. Separate the analyst from the executor. Do your analysis before the market opens or before you're in the trade. That's when your brain is calm and has bandwidth for complexity. Once a position is live, you are no longer allowed to analyze. You are only allowed to execute the plan you already wrote down. Maria does this literally. She writes her entry, stop, and target on a sticky note before she clicks buy. And once she's in, the sticky note is the only thing she's allowed to look at. Not the news, not the Twitter feed. The sticky note. Shift 2. Make your rules boring enough to write in one sentence. If you can't describe your entire strategy in a single sentence a stranger could understand, it's too complex to execute consistently under pressure. I buy when price reclaims the 20-day moving average with above-average volume after a pullback is one sentence. 14 indicators and a sentiment score is not a sentence. It's a research paper. And you cannot execute a research paper in real time while your heart rate is at 110. Shift 3. Pre-commit position size before you know the outcome. Decide your risk per trade, 1%, 0.5%, whatever fits your account, and set it as a fixed rule that doesn't move based on how confident you feel. Confidence is not a risk management tool. It's a feeling, and feelings are the least reliable input in the entire trading process. The moment you catch yourself thinking, this one feels like a bigger opportunity, I'll size up. That is the exact moment to size normally or skip the trade entirely. Shift 4. Build a 3-trade rule for losing streaks, not a gut check. Instead of letting intuition decide when to take a break or sit one out, build an actual rule. For example, after 3 consecutive losses, you switch to half size for the next 5 trades. No exceptions, no discretion. This removes the emotional negotiation entirely. You're not deciding in the moment whether you're off your game. The rule decided for you months ago when you were calm. Shift 5. Treat your stop loss like a contract, not a suggestion. Before you enter, write down the exact price where you're wrong. Not a zone, not a somewhere around there. An exact number. When price hits it, you're out. Not because you feel like it's the right moment, but because you signed that contract with a calmer version of yourself before the trade even started. The you in the trade, adrenaline running, is not allowed to renegotiate with the you who built the plan. Shift 6. Keep an execution log, not just a P&L log. Most traders only track whether they won or lost. That tells you almost nothing about the actual problem. Instead, log whether you followed your rule exactly, yes or no, completely separate from the outcome. You can follow your rule perfectly and lose. You can break your rule and win. If you only track outcomes, you'll accidentally train yourself to repeat the break that happened to work once, and that single reinforced exception is how a disciplined trader slowly turns back into David. Shift 7. Review process monthly, not trade by trade. If you evaluate your rule after every single trade, you will always be tempted to tweak it based on the most recent, most emotionally loud result, which is exactly the outcome bias trap from Root Cause 7. Instead, set a fixed review window, say once a month, and only look at the aggregate, 20, 30, 40 trades. Did the rule followed consistently produce a positive expectancy over that sample? That's the only question that matters. Any single trade inside that window is just noise wearing the costume of a lesson. Here's the identity shift underneath all 6 of these, because tactics alone won't hold under pressure. Right now, you probably think of yourself as someone who reads markets, someone whose value comes from spotting things other people miss, from having a feel for price action, from being able to sense a reversal before it happens. That identity feels good. It also guarantees you'll keep listening to your gut, because that identity requires you to. The 5% don't think of themselves as market readers. They think of themselves as rule followers who happen to operate in markets. When you stop being someone who reads markets and become someone who executes agreements you made with yourself in advance, everything downstream changes automatically. You stop needing to be right on any single trade because your identity was never tied to being right. It was tied to following the process. That single shift removes almost all the emotional charge from any individual loss. This is also, by the way, exactly how the house edge works in a casino. The casino doesn't try to predict which number the roulette ball lands on. They don't have a gut feeling about red versus black. They have a fixed mechanical mathematical edge, and they let it play out over 10,000 spins without ever deviating from it, once out of excitement or fear. Nobody in the casino's back office is having a hunch about Table 7. That detachment from any single outcome is precisely what makes the edge compound. Trading with rules is the same principle. You're not trying to be right on this trade, you're trying to let a positive expectancy process play out over hundreds of trades without you interrupting it. Now here's the part almost nobody wants to hear, and it's the actual pattern interrupt of this whole video. If your trading feels exciting, you are very likely doing it wrong. Excitement is a signal of variance, and variance is the enemy of a rules-based process. The moment you feel your pulse rise before a trade, the moment you feel that rush of, this is going to be a big one, you are no longer executing a plan. You are gambling with extra vocabulary. Real, sustainable trading looks and feels almost embarrassingly boring from the outside. It looks like brushing your teeth, same motion, same time, no drama, no story to tell at dinner. If you find yourself wanting to tell people about a trade because it felt thrilling, that thrill is data. It's telling you the position was probably sized wrong, or the setup was probably a gut call dressed up as a strategy. This is uncomfortable because most people got into trading partly for the excitement. The charts, the potential, the story of the person who turned a small account into a fortune. But the traders who actually stay profitable for years describe their days as almost monotonous. Check the rule, it triggers or it doesn't, execute or don't, log it, move on. There is no version of long-term consistency that comes with a constant adrenaline high. The nervous system simply can't sustain that arousal state for years without eventually making catastrophic decisions. Think about what boredom actually requires. It requires that nothing about the process is a surprise to you. Your risk per trade is already decided. Your entry criteria are already decided. Your exit is already decided before you're anywhere near the position. There's nothing left to feel anxious about, because anxiety lives in uncertainty. And you've engineered the uncertainty out of every part of the process except the part that was always going to be uncertain, whether this individual trade wins or loses. That uncertainty is fine to sit with. It's supposed to be there. It's the only piece of the puzzle you were never meant to control, and once you stop trying to control it through gut feel, the rest of the job gets remarkably quiet. Compare that to what excitement actually signals. A racing pulse before a trade usually means your position size is bigger than your rule allows, or you're entering on a setup you can't actually describe in one sentence. Or you're chasing a move that's already happened instead of waiting for your own signal. Excitement, in a trading context, is rarely a sign that you're onto something. It's almost always a sign that discipline just left the room. So let's go back to David and Maria, because this is where it lands. David, after his third blown account, finally does something different. Not because he suddenly gets smarter. He was always smart. He does something different because he finally gets tired of losing money to a system he never actually followed. He deletes 11 of his 14 indicators. He writes his entry rule in one sentence. He pre-commits his stop before every trade and refuses to touch it once he's in. It's uncomfortable at first, genuinely uncomfortable, because it strips away the illusion that his intelligence was ever the edge. 8 months later, David is not rich. He's not viral. He's quietly, boringly profitable. And for the first time, his live results actually match his backtest because he's finally trading the same strategy every single time instead of a different negotiated version of it. Maria, meanwhile, is still doing exactly what she was doing 4 years ago. 1% risk, one sentence setup, no exceptions. Nothing about her story is more interesting today than it was when she started, and that is precisely the point. Boring compounds, exciting blows up. So here's the actual choice in front of you, and it's a binary one, not a spectrum. You can keep trusting the part of your brain that evolved to spot predators in tall grass, applying it to a 5-minute chart it was never built to read, checking the news mid-trade, adjusting your stop because something feels off, sizing up because this one feels different. Or you can write down one sentence, one stop, one size before you ever click a button. And then have the discipline to be boring enough to follow it 400 times in a row. Same markets, same charts, same 24 hours in the day as everyone else watching this. The only real difference between the account that survives and the account that doesn't is whether the rule was written before the trade or invented in the middle of one. Which one are you going to be starting with your very next trade?